Two best friends go out for a night of fun, but only one makes it home. What starts as a missing person case quickly turns into something far more shocking. And the truth? It was hiding in plain sight all along. This is the story of Brittany Gargle, a young woman full of life, dreams, and a bright future ahead. She was the kind of person who walked into a room and made people feel welcome. She had a contagious smile, the kind that made you smile back, even on your worst days. Friends described her as fun-loving, adventurous, and always up for a good time. She had big dreams, ones that stretched far beyond the quiet city she called home. Her story begins in Saskatoon, Canada, a city known for its quiet streets and friendly neighborhoods, a place where families felt safe, where people greeted each other on the sidewalks, where crime wasn't something you thought about every day. But even the safest places have their shadows. Brittany was just 18 years old. She was at that stage of life where everything felt possible. The world was opening up before her: college, travel, love, new experiences. She had a kind heart, an infectious energy, and an optimism that made others want to be around her. She was the kind of friend who checked in on you, who stayed up late to listen to your problems, who never let you feel alone. Brittany had grown up in a stable, loving home. She had a mother who adored her, a stepfather who supported her, and a circle of friends who felt more like family. Her life wasn't perfect, but she knew she was loved. Cheyenne's life was different. She had lost both her parents at a young age, a wound that never truly healed. She had bounced between foster homes, never staying in one place for too long. The world had been unkind to her, and she carried that pain with her. But in Brittany, she had found something rare: unwavering friendship. Someone who didn't judge her, who saw past the anger, the struggles, the mistakes. They were more than best friends. They were like sisters, the kind of bond that felt unbreakable. On the night of March 23rd, Brittany and Cheyenne were ready to have fun. They had been planning this night, looking forward to it. They dressed up, picking their best outfits, doing their makeup just right. It was supposed to be a night to remember. And before stepping out, they did what so many people do. They captured the moment: a quick selfie, a snapshot of two friends, arms around each other, smiling at the camera. A frozen moment in time. At 12:02 a.m., Brittany uploaded that selfie to social media. The two girls side by side, looking happy, carefree. No one could have known that this would be her last post, that within hours one of them would be gone forever. Hours later, everything fell apart. The plan was simple: go bar hopping, meet up with friends, have a good time. They made their first stop at Manchester Brew Pub, a popular spot in the city. Surveillance footage captured them arriving together, laughing, carefree. Witnesses confirmed they were drinking, dancing, having fun. But what happened next? That's where the story starts to twist. At some point during the night, Cheyenne later claimed they went to another bar, the Colonial Pub and Grill. She said they kept partying, met new people, and eventually Brittany left with a stranger, a man in his 30s. It was the last time, she claimed, she ever saw her friend. But there was a problem, a big problem. When police went looking for footage of the two girls at the Colonial, there was nothing. No record of them arriving. No surveillance of Brittany leaving with anyone. It was as if that part of the night never happened. And then, something even stranger. Cheyenne told police that after Brittany left with the man, she went to her uncle's house. She even put her uncle on the phone to confirm her story. But when detectives checked the security footage from his building, Cheyenne never showed up. Her alibi had fallen apart. But was she lying? Or was there something she wasn't saying? Then, just as detectives were unraveling her version of events, a chilling discovery was made. A body on the outskirts of town, cold, lifeless, left on the side of the road like she meant nothing. When police arrived, they knew instantly. This wasn't an accident. Brittany had been murdered. And the cause? Strangulation. Someone had pressed their hands or something else around her neck until she could no longer breathe. The night was eerily quiet as detectives examined the scene. The road was empty, the only sounds coming from the rustling of nearby trees in the wind. Whoever had left Brittany here had done so carefully, deliberately. There were no obvious tire marks leading up to the spot, no signs of a struggle. It was as if she had simply been placed there, discarded without a second thought. Nearby, officers found a few key pieces of evidence. A leather jacket, dark and creased from use, lying crumpled a few feet away. A watch, its face cracked, the hands frozen at 2:47 a.m. Had it broken during a struggle? Had it been ripped off in a moment of panic? These were questions the detectives would have to answer. And then one other item. Something so small, so ordinary, that at first it didn't seem important. A black braided belt. No one could have guessed that this belt, this single item, would become the most damning piece of evidence in the entire case. But before police could connect the dots, Brittany's friends and family had to receive the heartbreaking news. That bright, smiling, full-of-life young woman they had just seen, she wasn't coming home. One of Brittany's closest friends, Atasha Story, saw the news bulletin and recognized the victim's tattoos, a couple of small stars and a lion's head. And just like that, the reality of the tragedy hit. "There's no way," she later recalled. "She was just here, just hours ago." As police worked through the evidence, they kept coming back to one person, Cheyenne Antoine. She had been with Brittany that night. She had lied about where they had gone, and now her friend was dead. But what really happened between them? What had pushed this night to the point of no return? Then police checked Brittany's Facebook page one last time, and that's when they saw it. A post from Cheyenne herself, written the morning after Brittany's death. "Where are you? Haven't heard from you. Hope you made it home safe." It was a carefully placed message, a cover-up, an attempt to make it seem like she had no idea what had happened. But what Cheyenne didn't realize is that the very thing she tried to use to cover her tracks would ultimately be the thing to expose her. Because somewhere hidden in the layers of this case was the undeniable truth, and all detectives had to do was find it. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to come together. A missing alibi, a fake social media post, and now a chilling photograph, one that captured not just two smiling friends, but the very thing used to end a young woman's life. Cheyenne Antoine had told police she had no idea what happened to Brittany Gargle. She acted like a grieving friend, desperate for answers. But what she didn't know was that the answers were already in front of them. The black braided belt found near Brittany's body, at first just another piece of evidence, was now something much more sinister, because there in the last selfie Brittany ever took was the same belt wrapped around Cheyenne's waist. And suddenly everything changed. Police had a lead, but it still wasn't enough. A photograph wasn't proof that Cheyenne had used the belt to kill Brittany. They needed something stronger, something that couldn't be explained away. The belt was sent to the crime lab for forensic testing, and when the results came back, there was no denying it. 2 DNA profiles were found on the belt. One belonged to Brittany, the other, Cheyenne Antoine. This was it, the proof they needed. The belt wasn't just something Cheyenne wore that night. It was the weapon she had used to end her best friend's life. And now there was nowhere left to hide. Police moved in. After 2 years of searching for answers, they finally had their suspect. And on a cold morning in 2017, officers knocked on Cheyenne Antoine's door. This time, she wouldn't be able to lie her way out. When confronted with the evidence, Cheyenne didn't break down. She didn't confess. Instead, she stuck to her story, insisting she had no memory of what happened that night. She claimed she and Brittany had been drinking, partying, doing drugs. She remembered an argument, but after that, nothing. But even if she couldn't or wouldn't remember, the truth was already out. The DNA, the lies, the photograph, they all pointed in one direction. Cheyenne Antoine had killed Brittany Gargle. The case was now in the hands of prosecutors, but there was one problem: intent. There was no evidence of premeditation, no clear motive. Without that, a charge of second-degree murder might not stick. And so, a difficult decision was made. Instead of fighting a long trial, the prosecution agreed to a deal. Cheyenne Antoine pleaded guilty, not to murder, but to manslaughter. She admitted responsibility for Brittany's death, but claimed she never meant to kill her. And just like that, the case that had haunted Brittany's loved ones for years was over. The sentence? 7 years in prison, 7 years for a life taken, 7 years for a future stolen. For Brittany's family and friends, it wasn't enough. It could never be enough. But justice in some form had been served, and Cheyenne Antoine, the best friend who had betrayed the person closest to her, would have to live with the truth for the rest of her life. A night that started with laughter had ended in tragedy, and in the end, the very thing that was meant to capture a happy memory became the one thing that exposed a killer. The courtroom was silent as the judge delivered the sentence. 7 years in prison for the killing of Brittany Gargle. 7 years for a life that would never be lived again. 7 years for a daughter, a friend, a young woman whose future was stolen in a moment of senseless violence. For Brittany's family, the verdict wasn't justice. It was a compromise. Cheyenne Antoine had confessed, but she had never given them the one thing they needed most. Answers. Why? What happened that night? What led her to wrap that belt around Brittany's neck and end her life? Her stepmother, Vicky Wickenhauser, stood outside the courthouse, speaking to reporters through tears. She was a wonderful person whose life was cut short, she said, and it's not fair. It's just not fair. Friends who had known Brittany since childhood struggled to process the loss. Atasha's story, the last person to see her alive, would never forget that moment. The last hug, the last words of warning. "If you need me, call me," she had said, but Brittany never got the chance. Inside the prison walls, Cheyenne Antoine began serving her sentence. But even there, questions remained. Did she truly not remember? Or was she hiding the truth to protect herself? Some believed she had simply lost control in a drunken, drug-fueled rage. Others wondered if something darker had been brewing beneath the surface all along. One thing was certain. Social media had played a role in both the crime and its resolution. The same platform where Cheyenne had pretended to be a grieving friend had also exposed her as a killer. A single photograph had unraveled her lies, proving that sometimes the smallest details can hold the biggest secrets. But for Brittany's loved ones, no amount of evidence, no court ruling, and no prison sentence could bring her back. They were left with only memories, old photographs, and the pain of knowing that the person who was supposed to be her best friend had become her worst nightmare. In 2024, Cheyenne Antoine became eligible for parole. Whether she has shown true remorse remains unknown. But for those who knew Brittany, one thing will never change. Her life was worth more than 7 years, and no amount of time served will ever erase the tragedy of that night. A friendship that began with trust ended in betrayal, and in the end, the very thing that was meant to capture a happy memory, a single selfie, became the undeniable proof of a terrible crime.